Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast, hosted by Angell Deer. In this podcast, we explore the mysteries of spirituality and consciousness. In each episode, we dive deep into the realms of human experiences, our rapidly changing world, and the unseen realms, tapping into the universal wisdom that connects us all. Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker, starting to awaken to the possibilities of a more expansive reality, or want support on your journey, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore topics such as shamanism, spiritual transformation, holistic healing, the medicine path, energy healing, plant medicine, ancient wisdom, and more. Our guests are respected elders and experts in their fields, and we'll learn from their insights and experiences as we journey together on the path of spiritual growth. If you can, please consider supporting this podcast by joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
This is very exciting. This time that on this podcast, we get to talk about the bees, but you don't have to be a beekeeper or interested about beekeeping. What we really wanted to explore is the mystical side of being in relation to bees and to the beehive. And my guest today, Tyler, has a long experience in professional beekeeping and also smaller hive management, and has been a student on the shamanic path for many years. And as we go through the episode, you will see how we go from, talking about what you probably know about the bees to more mystical, magical aspect of beekeeping. And ultimately how we find ourselves in the presence of a wise elder, of a spirit of the hive, of a deep reflection into our soul, how this connection to the beehive can help us see ourselves, heal ourselves, and if we deepen that connection, even receive guidance for our lives. And so I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. We've been investing a lot of time and funds in making those episodes better, in technology and all the supports we need to make those episodes. So first, I want to say I'm really grateful for all of you that are listening to our episodes. And I hope you really enjoyed today. I had a lot of fun, and there were some tears shed at some point in the episode. And so, yes, let's start now. Welcome everyone on this new episode of my podcast. I'm recording it today from the land of the sanctuary because I have my guest with me, Tyler. Hi, Tyler. How are you?
Hey, Angel. I'm great.
So Tyler and I have known each other for many years now. Tyler studied shamanism with me, and on the side, or I would say as his main activity was or is a beekeeper, and he's been working on big, large scale farms, smaller farms, people that do beekeeping in many different ways, but also because he studies shamanism and is very interested about the more spiritual aspect of beekeeping or working with bees. Those are some of the subjects we are going to address today. And yesterday, Tyler and I drove for 5 hours to go pick 4 new bee colonies that we installed in our hive, including one hive that is made into a tree trunk, which was pretty cool, right?
It's awesome.
We had a lot of fun doing that. And there is a video on my YouTube podcast that you can watch. I really encourage you to go check our YouTube podcast and subscribe to it. We put a lot of new video very regularly. And there's also a blog post that I made around this practice of bee shamanism and spiritual beekeeping. So you have more content to check if you're just listening to that podcast, or inviting you after we dive in today to go look at those other content. I also wanted to thank you for those of you that are our Patreon members. Patreon is a good way to support this production of podcasts. It costs money to edit this podcast, to add music, to bring our guests on the podcast. So if you feel cold, you can start with $5 a month and just support this production. So if you feel that those podcasts, this content is really helping you, as providing you support, we really, really appreciate the exchange. So welcome, Tyler. Good to be with you, brother.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
Yeah. So I would like to start by asking you a little bit about your story with the bees and how, when it started, all what called you into working with bees.
Yeah. And I just want to say thank you for having me on your land.
You're welcome.
It's always a great experience being here. And so yeah, I grew up in the woods. My parents ran a hostel when I was little until I was 9. So I really take to heart, being in the woods and being connected in those ways. And when I started going to college, I ended up commuting my entire career. So with that, once it ended up being the last couple years of college, my parents and I came to an agreement. If I commuted my last couple of years, I could, one, get a dog. So
they were like, you can get a beehive.
So that was the other thing, I was like, I need a hobby. I was working a lot through college, always had a couple jobs. And when I, just reading about bees, and it's something that's always intrigued me from a young age, but I really, took the dive after a while. I bought a bee suit, started, looking around, bought some equipment off of someone who was downsizing, and then ended up starting my own backyard hives. Started with 2, 3 at first. There's a lot of loss within beekeeping. So that's definitely the key of, to be a long-term beekeeper, you have to become okay with that. It's pretty, it's hard in the beginning to lose hives. It's something that's, I always explain to people, it's like, to me, and I'm sure to you as well, it's like having a fish tank. I could just sit in front of it, watch them flying in and out. Once I start pulling frames and going in there, it's your mind kind of goes blank, and you're just in the flow of, being another member of the hive almost. And that's where I've really found the bees accepting someone putting their hands in their home and doing all that, as if you're just kind of, acting like you're supposed to be there in ways. So once I started with backyard hives, I knew there was a lot to learn once I had done like one backyard season. So I ended up going to a club meeting, a local Lehigh Valley Beekeepers Association meeting. And it was really great. They were talking on the topic of queen rearing, and the president was doing a presentation, and he kept getting interrupted by a lot of the members. And once you really start to get into beekeeping, you realize it is something that is portrayed as a retirement job, because you're always doing something different throughout the day, the weeks, months. There's always something new. It's what really brought me in, is after so long, you're continually learning. It's almost been 9 years for me now, and I still feel like when I think about it, I'm like, I know nothing. But then you get going and you're doing all this stuff and realize there's a big accumulation of knowledge that just by interacting with something like that over time. So I really kind of wanted a fast track of just getting through the beginning stages, really understanding what I'm looking at. So I went to the president and I just asked, hey, can you introduce me to somebody who would mentor me a little bit? And that was something that was exponential. He introduced me to Dr. Robin Underwood, and then she mentored me for 5 or 6 years. She was doing research at Penn State, started at Kutztown where I went to college, and then hired me into her program after I learned enough to be able to work on my own. And then the journey kind of really started with popping my head in her office, just being like, hey, I bought a bee suit. Can I follow you around? And she loved it. We talked like right away for a while in her office, and within a week I was in the field with her.
Amazing.
And at that point I was still wearing gloves and doing all that stuff. So, but it really, meeting the right people, I think, and getting a mentorship really helped everything take off. But
beautiful. And so fast forward, basically, in the last 8 or 9 years, you also work for very large operation, right? And we'll be talking about it later in the podcast. But you have also experienced the bee industry, I would say, right? The large scale beekeeping companies in this country. And so you kind of seen the two ends of the sticks, I guess, from the small hive in your garden to that, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And it's something that's funny because, the majority of beekeepers are backyard beekeepers, but the majority of the hives that are owned in the United States are controlled by the commercial industry. So something that's, it's a little bit of paradox there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I guess it's like we were talking about it before we start the podcast, right? It's a little bit what we've done to milk productions or to meat productions and veggies and even organic food, right? There's a lot of people that might do their little production at home, might have their gardens, but there's a whole industry also. And there's a great chance that if you buy your honey at the supermarket, that is coming from those, big commercial industry companies. But if you go to your farmer's market or you stop along the road and you see a little sign, honey for sale, that you are dealing more with the small scale beekeepers out there, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. There are some, it's becoming more of a trend with, more of a holistic approach to stores, but they don't tend to be chains. And they tend to work with local beekeepers more.
Mm-hmm.
I know some places, even Whole Foods at points, will work with local people depending on the store, but they will also have right next to it the pasteurized honeys, the big commercial guys.
So yeah, I want to start kind of weaving from the beginning of our talk the spiritual connection to bees and bee shamanism, which I think it's easy to understand for people that are listening that, if you have 1,000 hives, you're not going to be able to have a direct relationship with each hive, with each queen, with each colony, because you just have to process so many hives and you cannot span. Where for me, having 3 or 4 hives, I can see, the difference with each hive, right? We just installed a colony yesterday and we, checked this morning and we can already see there is some difference between the hives, right? Some have more bees and some seems more active. So we can do really small management. We can be into direct relationship. So I want to know, because you have this profound connection to the bees and you've been working in different scale, how is that spiritual connection going once you are on those very large scale farms? And maybe you can describe a little bit for people, what do we mean by industrial beekeeping? What does that look like? Because I don't think people really understand the scale of it and how things works there.
Sure. Absolutely. And that's something that I try to tell people, especially with those large operations. A beekeeper is a farmer at that point. They're not, it's not this save the bees sort of mentality when you're in these places. I was fortunate to work for a good family company. They still cared about what they were doing. But at that, they had 30,000 hives.
Wow.
And
30,000.
Yeah. And with companies like that, their rule of thumb is usually they have one employee per 1,000 hives. So still, that is something that's very, extraneous to work. So,
yeah, I mean, if I had 1,000 hives, I don't think I will know exactly what's going on in each hive at any given moments, right? Because that probably take me a week just to go through each hive and spend 20 minutes with each of them, right?
Yeah, and with that, there's a crew of 4 to 5 crew members, and we're tasked with working usually 600 hives a day, which the place I was working in was California, around the almonds. I decided at one point, within the bee industry, it's a very stigmatized thing to, almonds are the biggest crop we have as far as pollinators go. And with that, it's the largest man-driven wildlife migration in the world. To send bees to almonds come January, it pays to go from the East Coast all the way out. And then what a lot of those guys end up doing is going from almonds to sunflowers to berries. And that's what gets them back across the country.
Yeah, so that everybody understand here, it's basically, a crop like almond trees, they are going to flower a certain time of the year. They are obviously not going to be in flower for, 6 months. And so when they are all in flower, and when you talk about the almond industry and the almond milk that some people are drinking, you need massive quantity of almond trees. So it's a monocrop culture, right? You just have almond trees as far as your eyes can see. And there is not much anything else there, which means there's no pollinators most of the time. So when the almonds are in flower, you need to bring those bees.
Yeah.
Right. And they are trucked around the country, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of hives are moved around. And then when the pollination season is over after a month, then those bees are moved, like you explained, to the sunflowers and into the berries and all of that. So to me, it's fascinates me that, humans are very weird sometimes. I have some kind of crazy ideas that we thought, okay, you know what? That's not a problem that we don't have pollinators. We're going to just move billions of bees around the country every year in order to sustain that kind of production, right? So I can see that obviously if we want massive scale almond production, we need industrial beekeeping. Right? The industrial beekeeping industry was a response to the intense farming of almonds and other monocrops that we do around the country. So how do you feel when you are in those type of practices, in those type of industries, about that connection to the bees? Does it change for you? And what is the relation there?
It was... for me, it was really peculiar experience when I first got to California, because COVID had just hit. I was there for maybe 2 months, and then everything shut down. But working essentially, especially in that industry, nothing stopped. And I kind of got this third, second, first person experience with that whole realm. Working in research when I first got there, I'm kind of dancing around all these big guys. I'm seeing all of kind of what's going on, and then worked with one of the commercial beekeepers, and then ended up consulting for myself for a little while. And through those experiences, in research, we're working hives frame to frame. And that's something that I'm always used to, because it makes you super curious going through hives, and you're always looking at their behavior.
So you basically open each hive, take each box on the hive, and then in each box there is, 12 frames or, more frames, and you just pull them out and look at each frame of bees. And so you have a direct experience, right? Direct contact with them.
Yeah, exactly. And then once we got into the commercial industry, we're basically working box to box. So instead of taking the time, the care to go through and evaluate everything that's really going on within the hive, now you're just looking at each box. You kind of want to just make sure they're laying brood. They have enough pollen and honey. And what really ends up happening is it's not much honey that exists in those hives. It's more or less feed anymore. So they feed them sugar water a lot, either 1-to-1, 2-to-1. A lot of them use what's now like a 4-to-1 ratio, because it doesn't ferment over time. It's really close to honey in consistency. So they end up using a lot of that stuff, which takes away from the diversity. And that's really what it comes down to when it comes to helping out, our pollinators in general. It's diversity. Mm-hmm. It's not the individual honeybee that's just a top performer.
So what you mean by that is that the honey that's produced in those hives, a lot of it comes from sugar water that is fed to the bee, basically.
Yeah, and when they go into almonds, because they're in this monoculture environment, once they're in almonds, they don't have to get fed anything. But because they use so many different chemicals, and almond honey tends to be a little bitter. You'll never see almond honey for sale. People don't want to eat that sort of stuff. It probably wouldn't pass, tests as far as, what else is in it. So with that, my connection to bees had always been such like a home experience. And then once I got to that industry, slowly that wonder started to fade in ways. And, with that, I had certain experiences that always kept me close. And I think that's, just the spiritual part about it. I always held on to why did I start kind of stuff. And that, if you get involved in the bee industry, you'll hear a lot of shoulds and the path that people usually take with their career. And, once you get out there and you build yourself up, that's like you're in the pinnacle sort of with that stuff. And after a while, working with those big beekeepers, the satisfaction really started to fade day to day. I would have these moments where there was an opening for, that wonder to be created in ways still. So for instance, when I worked for the school, in research still, I was going to move bees for the USDA, and we're on an orchard that was 3 hours south. So I drove in, and you lose cell phone service. You're kind of navigating through these farms just based off of a coordinate pin that you got given. And even with that, you're kind of like, all right, I'm in the area. I just need to keep driving, and I'll find these hives. And like you had mentioned earlier, I got there. You can only move bees at night. So I got there before the sun set. I kind of ran to the top of the hill, and it's incredibly beautiful. The sun's setting. All you're seeing is these blooming almond trees. The smell that surrounds you is just, creating even more wonder. So it's beautiful in the moment. And then you kind of think about it, and it's like, wow, this beauty is also the reason why there's no native bees here anymore. These acres and miles are just kind of just this. and they don't like cover crop because in these environments, especially in California, until this year, they've been dealing with a very large water shortage, which almonds take a very large amount of water to be able to produce. So moments like that, and then the keys got locked in the truck by accident, and we're 2 hours out from the farm. So I just had the chance to sit around in a bee yard and just kind of like covered my hands in bees. I'm just sitting there like watching them and feeling their vibrations and stuff. And those were moments that really, got more childlike again. It's just you and the bees. We're not going for this goal of 600 hives a day anymore, all that sort of stuff. And then working in consulting, I'd worked bees from a dozen states at least at that point. And the detriment to me is that when I get bees, it's to maintain this relationship. And, when bees all of a sudden get put into a business plan, it costs money to do this. I got to send a crew of guys there. Diesel costs this much, all that sort of stuff. And for the 3 months of almond blooms, once they go into almonds, unless you're a local company, like these bees don't get worked. They're kind of totally neglected.
They just drop them in the field basically and just basically pollinate, and probably some died if there's not enough food, right? And they just left there.
Lots. And that's the thing too. I'd worked on certain orchards where they had their own bees. And I also witnessed them chemically kill their own bees, spraying the almonds. There was a particular scenario where I went to a farm and I was supposed to be giving them a frame of bee analysis. So I got hired by a tech company who makes sensors for beehives. So they claim to be creating algorithms that can detect what a queen's doing, what sort of activities going on in a hive, and all of that sort of stuff. So as a business perspective, it's great that I can only send one guy out to yards to collect the information from the tower. Oh, I do need to send a crew here. No, I don't need to send crews here. Because that happens a lot. You go through yards and you're like, yeah, it was time to do this yard, but it really didn't need to get done. So
yeah, everything is into a schedule, right? Into a financial plan, into an Excel sheets, and we lose that magic. So I want to talk a bit more about that magic.
Yeah.
I think we get a feel just listening to what you were sharing the last 10 minutes about, the kind of dry, empty, soulless lack of relationship with those bees. And the magic only happen in relationship, like in, any kind of practices. If we can get deep dive into a relationship, then to land, to animals, to plants, and to each other, to our communities that we get to know over time, then we get to see something very special. So the bees have been around for millions of years. There are records of bees on monuments in Egypt. There are, they were revered and seen as God, and the special connection to the sun, and also used as healers. And I'm not saying just using the propolis or the pollens or the honey, what they are making as healers, but being in the presence of bees, being in the vibration of the bees, being in the smell of the hive. It's still one of my favorite things when we crack a hive open and we just have this incredible smell. And, for people listening, if you had the experience one day to experience that, it's complete magic. That's what I believe as smaller beekeepers, that's what we enjoy, right? That's what keeps that sense of whole you're talking about, right? It's all those aspects. So can you tell us a little bit about that side of the magic of the bees, that side of the spiritual magic of bees, like what we call bee shamanism, right? Being in relations to bees, getting healed by bees. And now it is explored still today in our modern world, far, far away from bees as producers of honey.
Yeah. with all that sort of stuff, I really see, a beehive is a window into the whole environment because, they interact with everything. They're digging up the mycelium, eating the sugars off of mushrooms. Typically, I love to think of bees in a tree, as like a management style. So they typically look for hollows in trees that were hollowed out by mushrooms. So they have just this incredible sense and smell and adaptability to anywhere they are. And that's kind of, as like a spiritual essence, I think they're such like a raw entity because, it doesn't matter where they are. When I left California, I ended up taking 2 hives into the desert in Arizona. And within 2 days, they're just bringing all this pollen, all this stuff. And it's just like the most adaptable, versatile thing. And I think that's kind of, a great reflection of spirit itself because it is everything. And with that, I always used to joke when I crack a hive open, like, oh, getting my aromatherapy for the day. And then actually you were the one to send me the respiratory article about the breathing tubes and hooking up to hives and stuff. And I was like, wow.
So tell us a bit about that because people here probably don't know about it. Explain us what that is, this bee therapy with breathing the bees.
Yeah. So the air in a hive is always circulated by the bees. They say air in a hive is cleaner than the air outside, even. And then you add the scent of propolis and all the honey and the nectar that they're wafting off into the mix, and there's just, you hook up a breather tube, that one where the screen, you're not going to suck up any bees when you take a deep breath.
Sounds better.
Yeah. There is some benefits of being stung too, but much more controlled than that. But yeah, we've read that there's just many benefits to respiratory recovery. Helps people with asthma.
So you basically wear a mask and you're breathing through the hive.
Yeah. You're just, and I think it only takes, 20, 30-minute session to, exclusively breathing that air. And then everyone has just reported an alleviation of their symptoms, after a while, whether it's just being able to breathe a little easier, or for, the longer period than the session, it may last up a week or things like that in the beginning until you start to really accumulate the benefits doing it consistently for a while until your body's fully recovered from whatever it is that got you there. And I know it's something that I had seen with kids actually, where I know with kids with respiratory issues, they tend to be healed quicker, it seems, than the adults. But yeah, so that's
so there's the breathing through the bees, and another things we were looking at, and we are thinking of first installing those breathing masks here on the land so people can come and experience that. So stay tuned. We'll let you know when that happens. But there's also sleeping with the bees, or what's called the bee bed, or the B&B.
Yeah.
As it is there. So tell us a little bit about that practice and kind of the very magical and spiritual aspect of it. And what is it first?
Yeah. So there are these enclosures built now over top of beehives. They typically end up working better with top bar hives,
which are those horizontal hives, right?
Yeah. And those mimic as closely as possible to bees in a tree. The niche that is the hive itself is more shaped like a round tree. Bees always lay in a crescent or a circle. even between boxes in the Langstroth design, you'll find that the brood chamber tends to be circled off, and it'll go from one frame to another in a top circle. So they're always building to the same design.
With a circle.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, right? That's something quite fascinating to me, because that's a fundamental shape of a drum, of a shamanic drum, of the movement of the sun, the shape of the earth, right? So they have this connection, and they're somehow making their hive in that shape inside.
Yeah, and bees themselves, it's the ultimate form of honoring the seasons as well. If everything comes back to itself eventually, and with that they are just astoundingly able to know what's going on when winter's coming. They're always prepping for the seasons, and that's kind of what makes it hard now with everything going on in the world, and temperatures shifting, and winter times that are warmer than normal, and all this stuff. So
bee bed.
So the bee bed ends up being a good way to get close to them and actually feel that vibration. So when I was saying how I cover my hands in bees here and there, they typically end up buzzing and flapping their wings at a certain rate. And, if they're covering any part of you, even if you just have one, you'll feel it, but you just feel it through and through your entire hand, or when you're laying on top of them.
So there's a specific vibration, basically, and sound.
Yeah.
That is going through you.
A certain amount of hertz. And that is something that it, in meditation and in breath work, they say, focus on something, and that's usually your breath. That's what takes you deeper. It's kind of the vehicle of your attention. And that's kind of what I feel like, when you're around bees, it's not really that you have a choice in it or not, that's just who they are and what they do. And they're just very zen. So, getting to lay with them or spend the night, sleeping on top of a hive.
But you would get stung, right, if you stopped on top of a hive. So describe a bit that bed, because I'm sure people are like, what do you mean sleeping on top of a beehive?
Yeah, so to mitigate that, and there's a lot of different designs, but peculiarly, having a thin layer between you, because we don't want to take away from your interaction there, but we also want to ensure your safety with that. So the top bar hive is designed to almost be enclosed in itself. When the frames are laid together, bees can't come up through the top typically, unless you leave them the space to do so. And the designs usually want a couple hives at least under the bed, so it gives your whole body full coverage. That way, through and through, you can feel the warmth of the hive. Typically, they're anywhere from 75 to 90 degrees all year round. Doesn't matter if it's the dead of winter or the height of summer. So they will make you sweat a little bit being in those rooms, but that's also part of the cleansing aspect of the experience. And they always have this hum. And I think with things like sound bowls and all that, they elevate the experience. But when it's just a nice subtle hum of the hive, that's something that it is that vehicle in itself. They are that vehicle. They say it used to be the practice of talking to the bees, and I think it's just a way of communicating that we don't quite understand yet.
Yeah. So you're basically laying on those beehives through, this wood, and you're in these enclosed chambers, and you're feeling the vibration you're hearing the sound, you're smelling
Mm-hmm.
the air that's going through the hive, and you get to experience, a few hours of sleep or a whole night
Mm-hmm.
in there. And what I was reading about is that people that have depression, addiction, some very serious illness, by spending a night like that, experience quite remarkable and magical healing and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the smell? Is it the sound? Is it the vibration? It's probably all of it, right? And probably also the presence, right, of 10, 20, 30,000 animals
Yeah.
under you
Mm-hmm.
that are, going at their activity.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite magical.
Yeah, and to me, it's very humbling to be able to be around bees and be accepted. I guess
Yeah.
is a good way to put it. Where they are just incredible. They can do so much, and they've lived so long, and to allow themselves to still be, um, to allow the relationship of a human interacting with them at this point,
Mm.
is something that, because we all have that experience of when we were a kid, and
Well, I think also many people are afraid of bees because they have the experience of the bee sting, right? And
mm-hmm,
it's not very often honeybees, right? It's wasp and
mm-hmm,
yellow jackets and hornets and,
mm-hmm,
the other kind of bees out there
mm-hmm,
that are, sometimes more aggressive or that defend their nest in a different way. But with honeybees, and, I was posting our experience yesterday when I posted the video on YouTube, and someone messaged me and say, oh, I need a bee exorcism because just watching the video, I get so scared. And I feel like something needs to be done on me, but it's really not the experience
mm-hmm,
when we're around beehives.
mm-hmm,
Yesterday, Tyler, you and I, we were, bringing those 4 colonies. We probably had, I don't know, 40, 50, 60,000 bees total that were just flying around us. And we had people coming visiting and witnessing that. And we had some children there, and all of us were around those hive and literally, try to visualize, for people listening, tens of thousands of bees flying around you. And, it's pretty intense. If you've never been around that amount of bees or
mm-hmm,
any kind of insect,
mm-hmm,
there's great intensity, especially when they can potentially sting, but
mm-hmm,
nobody was stung. None of us, and we were putting the bees in the hive, and there was so much going on there. And, the children there were quite amazed at it. They were also, picking up honey in the hive and eating the honey, and the
mm-hmm,
bees were just going at their business. So yeah, I think there is something quite fascinating to feel that they have this power potentially to sting us.
mm-hmm,
They have a home to protect. They have their babies and their food and their queen.
mm-hmm,
And somehow they kind of feeling the intention we have.
mm-hmm,
Right? I remember years ago, first time I got my hive, I think almost 10 years ago, one day I just had a really bad day, and I was just angry and upset and was not feeling well. And I just went to see the bees, and they just felt that energy, and they get really annoyed by it. They were just flying around me and kind of trying to push me away. And I was like, okay, it's not a good day, right, to open the hive,
mm-hmm,
because I'm not in a good internal space.
mm-hmm,
And they could just read that. They would know, right? I was not screaming. I was not going fast. They could just feel my vibration.
mm-hmm,
And on the days where I'm very relaxed, I know I can go and open the hive and put my hands inside and be covered with bees, and I'm not going to get stung.
mm-hmm.
So that's quite fascinating, no? That's what is happening here.
Most definitely. I think bees do have a keen way of understanding and detecting past, the physical, and with that, I think there's levels to it where, physically, that's why I prefer not to wear a veil, not to wear the suits, because
Yeah, so for everybody listening here, I do usually wear a veil, at least on my face, because that's one of the favorite place for bees to come and sting, because it hurts more. And we're walking on the same hive with Tyler, and Tyler wears nothing. He doesn't wear gloves. He's in shorts. He doesn't wear a veil, and he doesn't get sting. And they still, for me, I mean, I'm not ashamed to share it, but it's been 10 years and I still, have this little kind of apprehension of being stung, despite being stung is not that painful. It's not like a yellow jacket or a wasp. It's a more gentle sting, I would say, quite beneficial for the body at the end of the day. But there is still that thing there. And I think they know it.
Yeah.
So that's my experience of it. I have a feeling that they know that I have this little kind of, part of my relationship with them that still need to heal there.
Yeah, and I'll get reminded here and there.
Yeah.
Not wearing a
veil
sometimes, a few times, right? And now having this dark beard and longer hair, you represent a bear a little better.
Yeah, you look like a bear
to them.
More and more.
Yeah, so they tend to, not care until they have to. They know they're going to die if they sting you and stuff. But the most times that I've been stung by doing something is like an accident happened.
Yeah, so that was going to be my question. You work with, millions of bees and a lot of different hives, and some hives are pretty not happy, I'm guessing, because of the way they are treated, right, in those big production companies. So did you feel every time you were stung, it is because you did something really wrong, or maybe also because you were internally expressing something that was like anger or discomfort, and the bees kind of reacted to that?
Yeah, I think there's certain days, especially, during the pandemic, where it's like purely going through something, where, going in the field, it's not easy work at all. There's a lot into it. You have to physically use your body quite a lot. You're also using your mind the entire time to understand what's going on and what to do. And there's certain days, when I'm like frustrated and you're in the field and, you want to get the job done so you can go deal with whatever you need to deal with in ways. And like, hey, if you want to just like rush through this, we don't want you here, or if you aren't paying your respects in ways too. Like I always talk to the hives when I'm cracking a lid to get in there. I'm like, hello, ladies. How's your day going?
Do you say your name so I know who you are also?
I haven't done that, but I should. And that's part of maybe, I think, their sense to detect. Because they do know scent very well. They smell 100 times better than we do. So with that, it's also the detection of fear. They operate solely a lot off of pheromones. So, if there's any sort of apprehension in you or fear, or, once it gets to like anxiety and stuff, that's stuff more internal. So it's not projected out typically, but,
so they're like the ultimate teacher, right? Like you will go to meet your spiritual teacher or your guru or whoever is helping you on your spiritual path. And then you can just go sit on the hive, and you cannot cheat the hive. You cannot cheat the bees, right? You cannot lie to the bees.
No.
Because they will instantly know how you are feeling inside. And to me, I find that fascinating. Right? And I can see as I deepen my work in general, spiritual work and healing, how also my relationship to the bees or their relationship to me is shifting in reflection. And that's probably what fascinates us, all us too, I guess.
Yeah. And I think when it really comes down to it, if you enter into a hive and you're in this curiosity state, they tend to be way more accepting, because one, you're in awe like the whole time. Bees are just, the way they construct hives is captivating. even when they build comb where you don't want it as a beekeeper, it makes it harder for me to do my job. You're like, that's really cool though. That looks beautiful. So yeah, I think there's just so many ways where, as long as your intention is kind of pure while you're there, they reflect that. And I think when I walk in and my mind's somewhere else, or I'm angry or something, I kind of get that reflection. You open a hive and they just start bumping you right away. And
Try to slap your face or your butt, right?
yeah, and they're like, either get with it or get out, sort of thing. And yeah, it definitely depends on their relationship to you over time. Because the commercial bees that I've worked, it really didn't matter sometimes. It's like these bees are just angry.
Which would make sense, right? In the way they are treating and that. So it's very much like this, the bee shaman, the bee mystic, or people in the old days, and there are still a few people on this planet today that walk that way. They were able to go to the bees and share about what's going on in their life, what's going on in the life of their client. They would bring their clients there, their patients, or they would bring issues going on in the community. And they would basically listen back to the bees, and somehow the bees were able to whisper wisdom and to heal the patient that was there. And obviously that require a very deep relationship to that specific hive, to the specific colonies, and to the bees, and a lot of practice. But there is that practice out there, which is, like you just mentioned, talking to the bees. So tell us a little bit about that, because it's very ancient, right?
Yeah. And even down to how the Egyptians used to be able to interact with hives. They could actually mimic the sound of queens with their own voice so well that they could draw the queen out of a hive right to them, which it blows my mind to think about things like that, and how just deeply connected humans and these organisms are when it comes down to it. And that's something that has really unveiled, over time, where you build that relationship specifically. Like the 2 hives I took to the desert, I had a great routine where I'd wake up and I'd go read to them, like in the morning. Just sit in the hammock right next to the hive. I'd read to them. I'd meditate.
So you take a book and you're reading them, whatever you're reading at the
moment.
Yeah,
anything. And I think just them hearing your voice, they can detect the vibration of your voice.
Intention.
Yeah, and then I'd meditate with them, and then after a while, I've realized, and I've read here and there, where if you actually sit with them and the bees that are on the ground, if you like pick them up and you put them in up to the entrance of their hive, and you just keep kind of doing that, they really start to associate you with just like a caretaker kind of thing.
You're part of the hive, basically. You start being an integrative part of it.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, he's really here to help. He's
on our side.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And talking to the bees, it's, they say that they're messengers. They're able to freely pass through our world to the spirit world, and deliver messages to our allies all around us, our ancestors. And I've truly felt that at points, where it's just these peculiar moments where you're in like a deep struggle, but you decide to honor the relationship as you know to, and as you felt to in the past. And there's just moments where I'm like, you just really need a boost, and like your reality in some kind of way. And just even like praying around hives and stuff, I've had answers, come to me, whether it comes in the form of a friend soon after, or something like that. And, you know,
Do you have one example you want to share? I mean, you don't have to, because it might be very personal, but do you have an example where you went to talk to the bees and you experienced this mystical aspect of the hive, this answer back, this deep listening and then answer?
yeah, and absolutely. There's, it was my last bit of time in the commercial industry. I ended up working around this company, and I'd talk to their crew here and there when I worked for the school and we were in their yards. They showed up, and it was really cool for me because I'm like, you know, these are the guys that are doing it. These are the professionals, you know, in a sense, like they're the cowboys of the industry in ways and all that. Just wonder. And when I finally got one of my contracts that I had gotten consulting,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually on that owner's personal almond orchard at his house. And I was like, what a roundabout experience, you know, that circle in a way. And, you know, at that point, I had done so much where it's like, you know, I should be satisfied with this work. And yeah, I had a great time doing it all and stuff. And the people I met were all amazing. But there was still just this underlying feeling of just not being satisfied by the work. And I think I know now it was the environment that I was working in. And this was over, you know, about a week's time where I ended up, you know, I wasn't there to work his hives. Actually, I was there to do stuff with almond trees. But just being there, I was like, you know, I was taking my break, and how commercial beekeepers keep their hives is on pallets. So there's 4 hives on a pallet. And I ended up, you know, I just wanted to spend my lunch like meditating on top of them. And after a while, I just kind of prayed, and I was like, let me feel how they feel. And after meditating for a while, I sort of like got up, and I just felt incredibly disoriented. And I don't know, my body felt like sick in ways. And, you know, that definitely, for someone like me, I take all that stuff to heart, you know, and the practice, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it's very saddening just to feel that way. And so, you know, I spent time with that a little bit throughout that week. It was just kind of like really thinking about it. I was like, was that just me? Or, you know, was I really feeling how they feel? And knowing that they're chemically managed majority of the year and stuff, I can only imagine, you know, that's exactly how they felt. And, you know, at that point, I was just kind of in that environment and stuff. And it was just like, you know, how can I get back to what brought me here? You know, regardless of like where I am at the moment, you know, I want to get back to the essence. And, you know, being in that particular environment, I was just like, well, I was interviewing for jobs at that point because it'd been about 4 months, almost half a year of just doing contract work. And I was very steadfast, and I was like, I'm only here to work bees. You know, I want a bee job. I don't per se want to keep doing commercial stuff because one, as we relate, you know, I broke my back when I was younger. So over time, I know if I continue doing this, you know, I'll potentially take away from the quality of life when I'm older. And that's just something I want to be able to walk comfortably, you know, over time. And I ended up taking this phone call, and it was for a job that was going to be able to like host people in nature in ways. And I think I knew, like, right away, I was like, this is the first time that I've allowed myself to fully feel my way through a conversation, through, there's always like a lag when you're thinking about things too much with reality. And I hung up the phone and I instantly just like kind of dropped to my hands and knees, and I just started bawling and then laughing and then bawling and then laughing. And I was just like, there's my answer,
Mm.
And that was, in itself, hard to get there, but incredibly healing, all in one moment. And I know at some point I just read, once you get to a true spiritual experience, that's like pretty much exactly what it is,
And I can feel it in your words, and I can see you coming out of this meditation and feeling disoriented, and
mm-hmm.
and this, it's pure magic, right? It's beauty, and it's pain, and it's love, and it's clarity, and it's
Mm-hmm.
seeing everything from a complete different perspective. It's like now seeing very clearly, right? This experience of light,
Mm-hmm.
of revelation, thanks to the bees and the relationship, right? Because you were also seeking that, right? You were questioning it.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, okay, I'm just going to make money here. No, there's like something that feels deeply wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and that I do not want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that says a lot. And I think the bees saw the allyship and an answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel with beekeeping and just connection to bees bee shamanism, all those experience, the way we can experience the bees, I think that's probably the less explored. Obviously, we know how to use their product and the honey and the propolis and the
we all love it.
right? Breathing through the hives, the bee bed, and all of that. But I feel like here there is like this ultimate layer, which is the connection to the messenger that you mentioned, right? This connection to other realities, ancestors, our souls, guides. I remember in a ceremony 4 or 5 years ago, going to do a part of my ceremony for a few hours right in front of the hives. And so I were kind of almost in their flight path. And I just put my altar down and put my feather and my crystals and just starting to pray to them. And I was praying for this prayer of unity, of connection, because the hive for me represent this incredible capacity to live in harmony, even in a small closed space and overcrowded, right? And I was taken into that connection to the queen. And she was showing me her connection to sacred geometries and beings, not just sacred geometry inside the hive, but how it was a reflection of how they were connected to this perfect alignment of the universe, right? They were a representation of harmony, and showing me what is required for me in my internal work to get there, to manifest it out there, right? It's because they have this internal connection that they can manifest in their hive. And it was just this, very profound moments of like being really taught by the bees, by talking to the bees, by listening to the bees. And it was really magical, and it opened kind of a deeper layer of connection that hasn't left me since. In the way when I look at them and see them, I always remember that. And I bow to those little teachers, little winged teachers that are right there.
Yeah, and there's something that I've witnessed just being around bees so much, where it's like they've built upon this ability to resonate with each other, and that's something where we experience it as humans with each other, and doesn't always happen as easily as a hive.
Sometimes we sting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the balance of it all. You know, they're super sweet, but they're willing to go kamikaze when they want to or need to for the hive, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that is the ultimate sacrifice as well.
Sacrifice for the community,
Mm-hmm.
for the good of all, right?
Yeah.
They put themselves, I mean, what more in the front line, to be in the front line, to give your life for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it reminds me, years ago, I was attending an event with Lakota elder, and it was during the time of the fights with Standing Rock pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you had those warriors, you know, men and women being on the front line with just their drum and their songs
Mm-hmm.
to protect the waters, not just the waters on their reservation, but the water for the future generations,
Mm-hmm.
the water for downstream the river, which is outside the reservation, for all the relations, right? Not just us as humans, but animals and birds.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was asking the elder about how he felt about it, if he had any hope and in this fight, and you know, they were received on the other side by violence,
Mm-hmm.
right? People in full gears
Mm-hmm.
and smoke and rubber bullets and things like that. And they were still standing there. And he say, you know, we have prayer and action. This is action, and we're also praying.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we are ready to die. And I was like, wow, those people are ready to die for the waters, to give their life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he say, yeah, what will we not do to protect your mother?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not ready to die for your mother, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What are you even believing in?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you think of the bees putting themselves in the front line for the good of the community,
Mm-hmm.
you can just see the resonance there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Native people are able to still cultivate this such deep, intimate relationship to Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and to show us the way, you know, in the same way the bees are showing the way, and somehow act in the same way. So that, to me, that's something mesmerizing and beautiful, and really inviting reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how often in our lives are we upset or triggered by something that's going on in the world, and we might just rant about it on social media.
Mm-hmm.
We might just, you know, scream or whatever. But how often are we ready to put ourselves in the front line,
Mm-hmm.
to put our life at stake,
Mm-hmm.
that we are doing this for the community and not for ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that constant reflection is an invitation of how to go deeper in this work. And the bees are messenger of that. They're showing us how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing that for millions of years. They perfected it.
Mm-hmm.
They have invented democracy
Mm-hmm.
way before we did it. They have found a way to be in the front line and still be very gentle and caring and give us a lot of sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no aggressivity really. You know, this
Mm-hmm.
this kamikaze behavior is just a boundary setting.
Exactly.
It's just a clear no.
And it's funny with bees, like they'll bump you first, so they want to give you the warning. You know, they don't want to have to go to the lengths of stinging. But if they feel they're not being respected, or they're, you know, even just standing in their flight path, you know, they're like, you're an obstacle. So you put yourself, you know, in your prayer in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt the intention though,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the honor there. I always, when I find myself in the space of bees, you're in this energy that it's not a lack of focus of any kind, but it's a willingness to go in any direction. You know, that's how they built their adaptability, their versatility. You know, like we were talking the other night about when I took my bees straight to the desert sort of stuff, and I had noticed how they learned to collect water out of sand and digging and just letting the water pool up and just drinking that. it's just this incredible ability to adapt. And yeah, it's to go any direction is something that we portray as like ADD in ways, or lack of focus in ways, and stuff like that. But it is a very necessary thing to be able to, in a moment, flip the switch and, oh, we're doing this. Okay. I'm all in. Oh, but then we have to go here, and you bring yourself fully there every time. You don't leave anything behind. You're collected as a collective, and, the goals, if the goal changes, the goal changes. And, they have their set of what they need to do and worry about. But, on the surface, it comes and goes in different ways. And to be able to distinguish that, and I decided to leave the industry for a while. It's like, man, I really hope I'm not like making this decision and leaving bees behind in a way. It's like there's so much a part of myself that if I abandon this should have path, or should go path, for a while I was worrying about it or scared about it and stuff. And then I really realized, like, as much as I projected onto that decision, that was the invitation from them to find that honor.
Yeah, it's really profound, and I'm really feeling into what you just shared about sometimes, we can feel, well, I don't want to support that, but sometimes we can also change things from the inside, right? If we are on the outside, we can already change things. But I also believe that, what you're building and what you're going to do with the bees is going to, at some point, come back in a circle. I'm really, really feeling that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation. I could go on and on for hours. And, for people listening, I hope this gives you an invitation to curiosity, right? To awe to the bees. And if you're afraid of bees, to maybe look at them a little bit differently and really question, what is it I'm really afraid of? Is it my own pain? Is it to be confronted with this clear mirror, this clear reflection that the beehives gives us? And what is it that I carry that maybe are those beliefs that needs to be let go to be in good relations, not just with the bees, right? With each other and with ourselves. So I really thank you, Tyler, for being my friend, for having you here on the land, and also for sharing this wisdom that you carry, and that really is so obvious when I look at you walking on the hive. And I think the hive we installed yesterday are waiting for us. We should go check on them and see what's happening there. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and we'll do another one maybe next time you come, or in a year, and see where you are at. We'll be following your story.
I hope so. Thank you. And it's always so refreshing to be here. So thank you. What you build is just amazing.
And you have to come back to build this bee bed and bee breathing mask. And we might do a ceremony with the bees and invite people here, to have that experience. And, for me, as I always say, the bees are not about the honey, right? I like honey, and it's sweet and it's nice, but it's all the other aspect of beekeeping that gets me still very excited to have bees and go through the pain of losing colonies and still wanting to keep bees.
Yeah, I can't wait. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone that is listening. Please, we really appreciate your support. If you want to be a Patreon members, or if you want to support us on our work, check out our website, thesanctuaryheal.com, and also share this podcast with people that might be interested. We have, I think, close to 100 episodes now. So share with people that, might feel some guidance. We're really doing this. I am doing this as really a work of service, hopefully providing some value to all of you. And if you feel this value, just let us know. put a good review on our podcast, send us an email, and I'm always excited to hear how those stories touch you. So thank you so much, and very much looking forward to continuing a beautiful conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. We deeply value your support. Please consider sharing this podcast with others and joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. At The Sanctuary, we believe that spirituality is a personal journey that takes many forms, and we honor and respect all paths to awakening and the rise of consciousness. Our mission is to provide a platform for open and honest conversations about spirituality and to inspire and empower our listeners to live their most authentic lives in good relation to each other's, the living and invisible worlds. I look forward to connecting with you again here or at our events, retreats, and online gatherings. You can find all our offerings at thesanctuaryheal.com. Once again, it is thesanctuaryheal.com.